What's up guys, Londrick here and now I'm back for another edition of Londrick's Fave 5s. And last week it was Summerslam matches and this week it's Summerslam shows. So I'm not going to do a big introduction really, just going to throw a few honourable mentions out there before I get to the top 5. So honourable mentions: SummerSlam 2008, SummerSlam 1991, SummerSlam 2001, SummerSlam 2015. But enough about honourable mentions, let's get to the top 5. Coming in at number 5, we'll go back to 1997, heart and soul. SummerSlam 1997. What a great time summer of 1997 was for the WWF. One of my, if not my personal favourite periods in the company. I mean, obviously at the time they were still getting beat off WCW. But I've always said this, and I feel after WrestleMania 13, WWF made some big changes. The product was changing, things were getting better. You obviously had the whole Heart Foundation thing, Stone Cold exploding, great characters like Mankind, Goldust, etc. And we had a great card here overall. This was a month after the Epic Canadian Stampede pay-per-view, and the Attitude Era was coming. Wasn't quite there yet. I mean, they were still in the building blocks, but it was on its way. And overall, I thought this was an excellent pay-per-view. And nearly every match on the card had a storyline and a reason to exist, which was cool. So obviously kicked off awesome cage matches with Mankind and Hunter Hearst Helmsley. That's probably one of my favourite mid-card feuds ever. The Mankind Triple H feud in 1997. I think I've talked about this before, but it did so much for both guys. It did a great job of getting Mankind over as a babyface, and it toughened the Hunter Hearst Helmsley character up a little bit, I felt. Now, obviously, the more famous rivalry was Triple H and Cactus Jack of 2000, but this was a fantastic one as well. Obviously, King Lee 1997, Hunter Hearst Helmsley defeated Mankind. Then, of course, you had the Canadian Stampede match, and this match was kind of a blow for Triple H and Mankind. But obviously later on, perhaps even more famously, on Raw in September in Madison Square Garden, Cactus Jack made his WWF return. Because this was the time where Mick Foley was both playing Mankind and Dude Love. Dude Love had debuted not too long before this, maybe a couple of weeks. Then they also went on Mankind morphed into Dude Love during the match. Did the Superfly Jimmy Snuka big jump off the steel cage. Great moment. Goldust Pillman. Yeah, the match wasn't very good, to be honest with you, but it did have a pretty good storyline. Also Shamrock and the British Bulldog. That was an enjoyable gem in my opinion. I really enjoyed that one. LOD versus the Godwins. I always found this feud underrated as hell, to be honest with you. Obviously they weren't Mac classics or anything like that, but I thought they were just good brawls between two badass rugged teams. So I enjoyed the LOD Godwins anyway. Then of course the Nation versus, no, it was Los Barricos versus DOA, wasn't it? The Gang War thing. That was probably the worst thing on the card, but it was still okay. Because this is more the two main events. Stone Cold Owen Hart for the Intercontinental title. More famous for being the night where Stone Cold broke his neck. However, the match was actually really, if you actually watch the match as a match, and the match was actually really good to great. And obviously, they probably had, I think he had about 5 more minutes to the match, so if Austin hadn't brought his neck, who knows. Then of course, the big main event between Bret Hart versus The Undertaker for the World Wrestling Federation Championship. Probably one of the most important matches of SummerSlam history. I mean, this one had big stakes involved in it. Of course, stipulation was if Bret Hart could not win the title, he would never wrestle in the United States again. And Shawn Michaels, a special guest referee, if he showed any favouritism towards The Undertaker in any way, he'd not be allowed to wrestle in the United States again. And it was great to see Bret Hart and The Undertaker main event in the pay-per-view, because he'd been on the same roster for like 7 years at that point, and the only real high-profile match he had was at 1996 Royal Rumble. For the most part, they didn't wrestle that much. But they had great chemistry in my opinion. I think wrestling Bret did a lot to help the Undertaker. I always loved watching Bret Hart wrestle big guys, because I thought he did an awesome job of methodically wearing down his opponents, going after the legs, getting them on the mat. And I like the commentators would always say, well, Bret Hart gets him off his feet, Bret Hart's got the advantage, but if they're on the feet throwing hands, then Undertaker's got the advantage. I always felt Taker had some of his best matches with Bret. There was this one, then there was also one night only match about a month later in Birmingham. A fantastic match. Great finish as well with Bret Hart. Obviously, Shawn had missed Bret using his steel chair. Shawn was questioning Bret. Bret said, "Fuck you," spat on Shawn. Obviously, Shawn retaliated by he was going to swing the chair. Bret Hart ducked. Shawn hit the Undertaker. 1, 2, 3. And obviously, because Shawn Michaels had to make the count, and then Bret Hart is now the 5-time World Wrestling Federation champion. Only the second man in history to do that at the time, behind Hulk Hogan. And yeah, this was the time where being a 5-time world champion was a big deal. Now, obviously, now we're in the age where guys are 10, 12, 13-time world champions. But that's that's another issue. And of course, this match, it's set up so much if you think about this. Think about this, really. So, this match put the title on Bret, set up the Shawn Michaels Undertaker feud, which set up the first ever Hell in a Cell match, which set up Survivor Series 1997, which was a Montreal Screwjob, and which set up the Attitude Era. So really think about the Attitude Era. One of the biggest building blocks happened in this match right here on this pay-per-view. So if you haven't seen it before, I would definitely recommend checking out SummerSlam 1997. Coming at number 4. We're going to go recent. For 5 years ago. SummerSlam 2013. So just a little spoiler, this will be the youngest SummerSlam on this list. I mean, let's be honest. But none of the SummerSlams recent years have been that amazing. But this one was. I mean, maybe you forgot about this SummerSlam. But this show was awesome, actually. Really great. I mean, obviously, it's most remembered for 2 of the best SummerSlam matches of all time. But the undercard's pretty decent as well. I mean, most notably, you've got an awesome gem on this card for the World Heavyweight Championship, Alberto Del Rio vs. Christian. Now, we've seen Bryan and Punk and Lesnar. This match is probably one of the most forgotten SummerSlam matches of all time. This match was fucking great. Now, obviously, it was at a time, I think, probably Del Rio's best ever WWE run was from that last world title run from Payback to whatever pay-per-view he dropped the title of John Cena, Hell in a Cell maybe, Battleground, I can't remember. It's 5 years ago, I can't really remember, but that run Del Rio had from when he beat Ziggler to back heel was definitely the best run Del Rio ever had in the WWE. This was the last few months of the World Heavyweight title. That title will get dissolved in September when Orton and Cena unify the title. And while we're at it, just throwing this out there, instead of the Universal title, shouldn't they have just brought back the World Heavyweight title? Just saying. And just want to throw that one out there. And obviously Christian Del Rio have the history from 2011 from that ladder match at Extreme Rules. And yeah, this was Christian's last major match of his career as well. Because I think he got injured not long after this, then came back in early 2014, and he was in the Elimination Chamber that year. Then he got injured again right before WrestleMania 30, and then obviously, ultimately the concussions forced him to retire. So quite a historic match in that sense, really, if you think about it. We had Cody Rhodes versus Damien Sandow. That was a good mid-card match. Nothing fantastic, but a good mid-card match, and kind of funny looking back just to remember. Damien Sandow was once Mr. Money in the Bank. That was an actual thing. Of course, it never went anywhere because he lost to Cena. And this is obviously the start of Cody Rhodes' run as a babyface, which would lead to the whole Rhodes family versus the Authority storyline, which is probably Cody's most high-profile WWE storyline. There was some weak points in the show, particularly the Natalia Brie Bella match. That was just, It wasn't terrible, but it wasn't very good. I mean, to me, you could have made this the one thing that made this a better show. You could have put that Natalia Brie match on the pre-show and replaced it with RVD versus Dean Ambrose, which was on the pre-show. I think it would have been a better show. And of course, the Ring of Fire match between Bray Wyatt and Kane. This was just like, ugh. Yeah, that wasn't very good. That was just a bad match. Then we got a tag match, AJ Lee and Big E Langston versus Dolph Ziggler and Caitlyn. This was a decent mid-card match. Obviously, it was in an impossible spot between two amazing matches, but it did alright. So let's talk about these amazing matches. First up, Brock Lesnar versus CM Punk, the Beast versus the Best. This match was amazing. I watched this match like maybe 2 weeks ago, and what struck me most is look at Brock Lesnar then, and look at Brock Lesnar now. It's like watching two totally different wrestlers. This match was just unbelievable. Brock Lesnar actually gave a shit. They told an amazing story. Then they had the great thing of the Beast Brock Lesnar, CM Punk, the smaller guy but always fighting. Obviously they were both Paul Heyman guys, so there was that. And yeah, this match was fucking awesome. Maybe Brock Lesnar's best ever match. I believe when I did the list I put it at number 1, but I could be wrong. But if it's either this match or the Eddie Guerrero match at No Way Out. So there's a little irony for you. Brock Lesnar's best 2 matches were quote unquote smaller guys. I'm sure people go, vanilla midgets. But yeah, this match was just unbelievable, really. Some awesome spots and all that. And obviously, probably CM Punk's last great match of his career. Because let's face it, the last few months of CM Punk's run were kind of disappointing, really. I mean, the whole Heyman feud turned into a Ryback feud, then obviously him and Bryan against the Wyatt family. Then a so-so feud of Punk and the Shield, and of course, Punk left after the Royal Rumble. So this CM Punk never returns to wrestling. This will be his last really great match, and Brock Lesnar hasn't had a match since this match has even come closest. I take that back. I suppose the match has come closest was probably their triple threat match with Cena and Seth Rollins at Royal Rumble 2015. But yeah, you just get through the point. So then obviously this led to the big main event for the WWE title, John Cena versus Daniel Bryan, and that was surreal, really. So just imagine thinking like, I don't know, like 2006, 2007, then in a few years' time, Bryan Danielson's going to face John Cena in the main event at SummerSlam. That was just so weird to think about. Obviously, this is the time Bryan was getting really, really, really hot as a babyface. I mean, fans were just all over Daniel Bryan. And I guess that lasted for, I think that was going on since about the time of Payback, I suppose. When Daniel Bryan got really, really popular. Cena was in another WWE title reign from WrestleMania 29. And that was actually an underrated title reign, I thought, Cena's 2013 reign. Couple of good matches with Ryback, a really good match with Mark Henry, and then there was this one, and Cena adapted to Bryan's style very well. I mean, Cena's got a good record of wrestling so-called internet darlings in great matches. He had an awesome match with CM Punk there. They don't need to be spoken about, really. Some great ones with Kevin Owens in 2015. Some awesome ones of AJ Styles in 2016, 2017. And this is Cena and Bryan's only pay-per-view match, because obviously after that, Bryan's career went down. He pretty much injured all the time, and now Bryan's back. Cena's a part-timer, so they might wrestle again, they might not. I mean, I'd be down for Cena, I suppose. And really shocking moment, Daniel Bryan beats John Cena clean in the middle of the ring to win the WWE title. That wasn't how the show ended, though, was it, really? Obviously, show ended with a big angle with Triple H turning on Daniel Bryan, Randy Orton cashing the Money in the Bank, then the start of the Authority feud. But we'll not get into that right now. We might talk about that later on. But if you haven't seen this show or you've just forgotten about it, definitely don't sleep on SummerSlam 2013. It was a fantastic show. Coming in at number 3, and I know I'm probably getting some slack for this one, but I'm going to explain it. SummerSlam 1992. And I know what you're thinking, yes, it wasn't. I readily admit there were much better SummerSlams than this for me. Because sometimes I do favourite doesn't necessarily mean best. So yeah, I'm not blind to the fact that SummerSlam 1992 wasn't an awesome SummerSlam, that there were much better SummerSlams than this. But of course, as I've explained before, I mean, this was my first ever WWE pay-per-view on TV. So, come on, if you want to have a go at me about this, just think about this. Is your first pay-per-view not special to you? Do you not hold, whatever it may be, is your first WWE pay-per-view, is that not special? Does that not have a special feeling in your heart? If you say no, I'm going to call you a liar. So I'm only doing what pretty much every other wrestling fan's done. I mean, I'm sure most other wrestling fans rate their first WWE pay-per-view and great childhood memories over what was a quote-unquote better wrestling show. So obviously this is the oldest SummerSlam on the list. So we're going back 26 years to SummerSlam 1992 in Wembley Stadium, London, England. Because I explained in the last video when I talked about Bret Hart and the British Bulldog match, that being my favourite match. So pretty sure most people figured out this would probably be on the list. So I won't go too much detail about Bret and Bulldog because I did that last week. But I'll just reiterate one point. Obviously this was at the time early 90s. Their popularity was declining. They do wrestling in the United States. But business was booming in Europe and UK, Germany, Italy, etc. Especially UK and Germany, I think. So Vince McMahon decided to take advantage of the popularity in England by staging one of its major pay-per-views in there, SummerSlam, the Wembley Stadium. Pick Wembley Stadium, of course, the biggest, most famous stadium in the country. Obviously, that's the site where the FA Cup finals take place every year, the League Cup finals, or the England games. So obviously, this has hosted Champions League finals before. Probably most famously, World Cup final 1966, where England won the World Cup in England. So, and it's so much history in that stadium. So, and obviously in London as well, our capital city. So, perfect location really. And obviously at the time you had homegrown British superstar and national hero Davey Boy Smith taking on Bret Hart for the Intercontinental title. And like I say, I'd been a wrestling fan. It's weird because I always thought I was a wrestling fan in about June of 1992. And don't crucify me for this because I know how weird it is. A few years ago, and I know how weird this sounds. I was looking up Nails' WWF debut when he came out and attacked the big boss man from the crowd. And that was listed as early May of 1992. So I must have been mistaken for a long time. I obviously started watching the WWF in early May of 1992. And obviously back then, this was the time where TV was basically squash matches and a few promos held in. You had Saturday night's main events, of course, but by 1992, I think they'd lost the deal with NBC at one point, and they were on Fox, but they were only Saturday nights was getting phased out. They only had 2 Saturday night main events that year, one in February and one in November. So I hadn't seen a Saturday night at that point. And obviously back then, you didn't get 12 pay-per-views plus a year like you do now. So I finally got to see a big show with stars versus stars in the entire card, and it was fucking awesome to me at the time. But objectively, I will say I thought it was a better card than people give it credit for. I hear people saying it was just about Bret and Bulldog, but that's not strictly true. There was more good stuff on it than that. I mean, I thought Legion of Doom versus Money Inc. was a good opener. Not fantastic or anything, but a good tag team match nonetheless. Actually more impressive when you think about it. Hawk was actually high as fuck during that match. I mean, and LOD's last big moment of that WWF run is obviously they both leave after that. Shawn Michaels and Rick Martel was a solid match. I thought the storyline was funny about Sherry finding them both so attractive that they wouldn't let them hit them in the face, and then they did it, and then Sherry fainted and all that. It was a comedy match. It was alright. Natural Disaster versus Beverly Brothers for the tag titles was at least a decent match, I thought, anyway. Nothing fantastic, obviously. The Undertaker Kamala was pretty shit, but this is whatever. But there was two big matches on this show. Obviously, the first one, and what was probably the main event for the American crowds, American fans, Ultimate Warrior versus Randy Savage for the World Wrestling Federation title. Back when face versus face matches were pretty rare, although ironically this show has two of them. This match, it wasn't as good as the WrestleMania 7 match, not by a long shot, but it was a very good match overall. Maybe went slightly too long. It was about 28 minutes. Maybe if they shaved 5 to 7, 8 minutes off there, it might have been a better match. But who knows? But this was a big storyline going to this one, was whose corner would Mr. Perfect be in? So for weeks and weeks and weeks, Perfect was offering his managerial services to both Macho Man and Ultimate Warrior. Both adamantly denied making the deal, but both convinced that the other had made the deal. Then of course it turned out to be a massive ruse, as Savage, Flair and Ric Flair and Mr. Perfect ruined the match, caused a no contest. And the whole goal was to soften up the champion so Ric Flair could swoop in and take the title, which is what Flair did when they got back to the States later on, about a week later, to become the new champion. Now, of course, Bret Hart, British Bulldog, talked about that match last week. Don't need to go into great detail about that. I mean, talked about it at length last week. I'll just reiterate what an amazing match it was. Classic match. Awesome moment of Davey Boy winning the Intercontinental title in Wembley Stadium. So yeah, like I say, obviously they are much better SummerSlams than SummerSlam 1992, but because of childhood memories and being the first pay-per-view I watched and all that, this one will always be special to me. So SummerSlam 1992 is number 3. And now we're clocking in at number 2. Back to the Attitude Era. SummerSlam 1998, Highway to Hell, Madison Square Garden. This was obviously a massive time for the company. I mean, summer of 1998, unbelievable time for wrestling in general, with both the WWF and WCW. In this little thing you might have heard of called the Monday Night Wars. I mean, so WCW beat dominant. You might have heard about this. WCW dominated for 83 weeks in a row. Pretty sure that's been beaten to death by now. But then, of course, April 1998, the WWF wins a round, obviously on the back of the super hot Stone Cold Mr. McMahon angle. And the WWF finally catches up. WWF and WCW trading wins back and forth. Super competitive environment. Obviously, since Mike Tyson came in WrestleMania 14, the WWF popularity just skyrocketed over the next few months. So many new fans that tuned in at the product, and it was amazing. And this show overall was absolutely amazing. Obviously, the back in Madison Square Garden for a SummerSlam, which, like I think I've said in previous videos, just something about Madison Square Garden pay-per-views is special. Just there's something magical about Madison Square Garden. It just always seems so much more special than any other arena in the world, really. And while we're on the subject, I'm so excited that Ring of Honor in New Japan have got a Madison Square Garden date. That should be amazing, let's be honest. But overall, this card was awesome. I mean, from top to bottom, just a great card. I mean, you had a young, vibrant roster, and they all went out and impressed. I mean, yeah, D'Lo Brown, Val Venus. That was a really good opener. I really enjoyed that opening match. Probably one of my most underrated SummerSlam gem of all time, because it kind of gets forgotten about due to bigger matches on the card. But D'Lo and Val, two young guys coming up at the time. D'Lo was a European champion. Val Venus had been in the company for a little bit, but obviously the Val Venus porn star gimmick really got attention. I love the line that Val Venus did before this show when he goes, "I came, I saw, and I came again." So yeah, really good. Obviously, I think the finish was kind of naff with naffy 80s style DQ finish, but match was really good nonetheless. Now, pretty much the one bad point of this show was Oddities versus Kai and Tai, but that was just a comedy match, really, harmless enough. Yeah, it was crap, but it was just kind of a fun comedy match, whatever. No real harm done, and I apologise if I reminded anybody of the Oddities. Just the Oddities was awful, and so the Insane Clown Posse, and another really good gem I thought anyway. X-Pac versus Jeff Jarrett, hair versus hair match. That was a really good match. Now obviously Jarrett and X-Pac had both been in the WWF during the New Generation days, but came back for the Attitude Era, and this was a really good match. Nothing fantastic, nothing that was going to blow anybody away, but a really entertaining match. And of course Jeff Jarrett lost, and that was the end of the classic Double J with these long locks and that stupid attire. You know the one I'm on about. And then he got his short hair and short tights after this, which is most commonly remembered for. And we got a really good mixed tag match with Mark Mero and Jacqueline versus Edge and Sable. Probably wasn't as good as the one at WrestleMania 14 with Mero and Sable versus Goldust and Luna, but this was a good match as well. I mean, obviously Sable was just figuratively and literally, not that, what am I saying? From the way she looked and how popular she was so hot in 1998. I mean, Sable, I've probably said before, was as hot as nearly just about anybody in the company in 1998, except for maybe Austin, DX, and maybe The Undertaker. Sable was as popular as all of them. Obviously, she started wrestling a little bit more in 1998. Let's be honest, she was a crap wrestler, but they had veterans like Luna and Jacqueline that could carry a reasonable matches. But it wasn't really Sable's job to have great wrestler matches, was it though? It was a job to be hot, to sell tickets, to sell merchandise, to get crowd pops, to make money for the company. And she did that. And this was obviously Edge's first WWE pay-per-view. Obviously Edge would go on to have a big career after this, but at the time he was just a young guy trying to find his feet in the company. But obviously it'll be mostly uphill for Edge after this. I suppose another not so good match was New Age Outlaws versus Mankind handicap match for the tag titles. It was supposed to be Kane, but Mankind and Kane split up, but it was alright. Actually, one of my matches I liked on this show was a Lions Den match between Ken Shamrock and Owen Hart. So of course Shamrock, a big UFC star back in the day, came at the WWF, and this was a time where WWF and UFC weren't really competitors. UFC were a lot smaller than WWF at the time, but of course obviously UFC's popularity would explode in the 2000s. So they did this thing called the Lions Den match, which was basically a wrestler match inside of an octagon. I thought it was fun as shit anyway, and I've always thought this was always a missed opportunity for. They had Brock Lesnar under contract all these years, and they've never had Brock Lesnar in a Lions Den match. I would have enjoyed it anyway. I mean, obviously not now, because it'd probably be a load of shit with Brock Lesnar wrestles these days, but back when Brock Lesnar was giving a shit, that kind of thing. Obviously they did another Lions Den match the following year, Shamrock and Steve Blackman, but I think this one worked a lot better with Shamrock and Owen Hart, and that was a really underrated mid-card feud at the time. Probably one of Owen's last really good feuds of his career, although obviously Owen died less than a year later. And of course the Attitude Era kind of faded out a little bit, but obviously this was when Owen was in the Nation, him and Shamrock were feuding. Really good match with Shamrock going over, but obviously there's two big matches on this show, and obviously the show stealer. This came close to being a Fave 5 in the last video. The Rock versus Triple H for the Intercontinental title in a ladder match. I mean, this is a big match at the time. Obviously you had Stone Cold and Undertaker as your guys, and I guess Kane, Mankind after that. But you're looking at The Rock and you're looking at Triple H, and these look like the future of the company. It's obviously big feud based on the Nation versus DX. Triple H was the leader of DX, they turned babyface. Rock was the Intercontinental Champion, leader of the Nation Domination. And Nation versus DX was a big feud in the WWF around this time. Probably one of the better faction feuds of all time, in my opinion, anyway. And maybe nowadays a lot of people sleep on the Nation and forget just how good they were. And I'm going to be honest, it wasn't like fairly recently that I'm starting to think about this. I think looking back at the guys the Nation had, you got The Rock, obviously one of the biggest stars of all time, mega movie star nowadays. You got Hall of Famer Farouk, Ron Simmons, Owen Hart, obviously not a Hall of Famer but should be. You got The Godfather, Hall of Famer now. Mark Henry, recently Hall of Famer. So that's not bad, is it really, when you think about it? Obviously, DX. I've always preferred the '98 DX over the original DX, but that's just me. Obviously, this is a big feud of the Intercontinental title. Two young guys, both would go on to be two of the biggest stars of all time. And this match as well. What's doubly impressive? This is a ladder match, right? And you're thinking, really, The Rock's not really a high flying type of guy. Triple H isn't really a high-flying type of guy, so how's this going to work? Well, instead of doing a bunch of high spots and all that, they had a violent match which told a great story. And obviously it was doubly impressive. Triple H is going into this match with a big knee injury, so essentially he wrestled this match on one leg. But despite that, they had one of the most hottest, the most exciting ladder matches of all time. And ironically enough, in Madison Square Garden, the site of the famous Shawn Michaels Razor Ramon ladder match at WrestleMania 10. And what struck me about this match really is this was a time that both men broke out. This ended up being both men's breakout matches. That's pretty rare really, isn't it, when you think about it? I mean, you have a lot of matches where one guy breaks out, but very rarely do both guys break out, and I feel he did here. Now obviously Triple H's knee injury delayed his coming out a little bit, but obviously The Rock got sued, because I think this is the time the fans got super behind The Rock. And obviously after that, The Rock turned babyface. Then the whole epic turn back at Survivor Series 1998, which I'm pretty sure we'll get to that at some point. And then obviously a year later, Triple H becomes a game, and so by year two goes by, these guys have pretty much made their careers. An amazing match, a great show stealer match. Then we got the main event for the Highway to Hell for the World Wrestling Federation title. Stone Cold Steve Austin versus The Undertaker. Now I should point out, obviously the network, it's not on the network anymore because of copyright reasons and shit. But the theme song for this pay-per-view is a classic AC/DC song, Highway to Hell. I mean, one of my favourite pay-per-view themes of all time. And I'm going to admit it, I didn't even know about this song until 1998. So that's quite embarrassing. And obviously it's not on the network either, but the Raw before this show. But I think it's on YouTube. They did this epic hype promo package of Austin the Undertaker to the Highway to Hell theme song. Just awesome. I just wish WWE would have paid the rights to use Highway to Hell on the network. It would have added so much. Well, this match felt huge. I mean, the build-up for this match was amazing. I mean, I don't want to go into too much big detail because I could probably talk about 10-15 minutes just about the build-up. But the build-up is fucking awesome, I would say. From the night after Over the Edge where Undertaker cut that big promo about Vince and all that and going back for the title to this. The build-up was fantastic. And of course this match happened in 1997. But I say a bunch of new fans came into the promotion after WrestleMania 14, so to a lot of fans this was the first time dream match. I've always said this is the biggest SummerSlam match of all time. I mean, you could argue maybe the only one I could really accept as a good argument is the first SummerSlam with the Mega Powers versus the Mega Bucks, and at a push Hogan versus Shawn Michaels in 2005. But for me, overall, this was the biggest SummerSlam match of all time. Drew the biggest buy rate in SummerSlam history. And I think I've said this before, this felt bigger than most WrestleMania main events. And to me, the match was a very good match. I don't think it was an awesome match or anything like that. It didn't really need to be, but it was a very good match. Because it's significant. If you watch very early on, there's a spot where Austin kicks the Undertaker. Undertaker whips his head up, whacks his head into Austin. So a massive awkward clash of heads, and Austin's pretty much knocked out for the rest of that match. Austin's totally loopy during this match, and the Undertaker's really carrying him through it. But it was a huge match, a huge crowd in a big arena, not a big arena, but a famous arena like the Madison Square Garden. And Stone Cold defeated The Undertaker to keep the WWF title. I mean, if you haven't seen SummerSlam 1998, I definitely recommend you checking it out. Because I think a lot of the criticism of the Attitude Era is the pay-per-views weren't as good. Well, if you want a great Attitude Era pay-per-view, this is one you should definitely watch. And to the surprise of pretty much nobody, number one's a no-brainer, isn't it? Really, I feel like if I surveyed 100 people, at least 90 of them would say this was the best SummerSlam of all time, and that's SummerSlam 2002. Now, for me, this remains the gold standard of SummerSlam pay-per-views ever. You know, obviously you've got your WrestleMania 17, but this show is right up there. This for me is the second greatest WWE pay-per-view of all time, behind WrestleMania 17. I mean, the build-up for this one's, I don't really remember much about the build-up really, overall. But obviously this was at the time where the company was changing. They'd done their brand extension in 2002, and they were getting away. They were starting up the Ruthless Aggression era. It was at a time where The Rock was going towards Hollywood, Stone Cold had walked out, and obviously a lot of the stars were just getting older and probably staler as well. So it was time for obviously there was no competition now either. No WCW, no ECW, nothing. Obviously NWA TNA just started out, but that was really nothing at the time. Ring of Honor was what it was. It was an indie niche promotion. It was never going to really compete with WWE. So new stars need to be created, a new product need to be created. This show, just overall, what a show this was. I mean, it's got a great mix of veterans and young guys on there, and it's just an awesome variety of matches. And that's what I love in the pay-per-view, variety of matches. I mean, if a pay-per-view just has technical wrestler matches, cool, but there's no variety in that. But if a pay-per-view also has just a bunch of hardcore brawls and all that, that's a bit boring as well. So you got a little bit of everything on this show. I mean, opening match, Kurt Angle versus Rey Mysterio, one of the best 10-minute matches you'll ever see in your life. I mean, this was Mysterio's first WWE pay-per-view, and on paper, Kurt Angle versus Rey Mysterio looks like a weird pairing, really, but they clicked like fucking mad. I mean, Kurt Angle really adapted to Rey Mysterio's style. I feel like Kurt Angle was definitely the best wrestler in the world at the time, and Rey Mysterio was still at his athletic prime back then. And obviously, so the first pay-per-view matches, 10 fast, furious minutes, awesome. Jericho Flair, I wasn't really a big fan of that match. I thought it was okay, but I don't think it's much more than that. Obviously, I think this was the time Ric Flair had a lot of issues with his confidence and all that, and the match was just okay, really. And then what have we got? Edge, Eddie Guerrero, a really good mid-card match. Obviously, I think later on, Edge and Eddie blew these matches out of the water when they had that no DQ match on SmackDown in September. Well, this is a good mid-card match because Eddie Guerrero had been back in the company a little while, and really Eddie Guerrero came back better than ever after he got sober and all that, got off the drugs and the drink, and just was focused on his wrestling career. Because obviously Eddie knew coming back to the WWE really was a second chance, and if he screwed up he'd probably never get another chance. So I would say Eddie Guerrero, from his comeback to his death in 2005, was the best Eddie Guerrero. Edge was a big rising star on SmackDown at the time. Obviously, he had that huge feud with Kurt Angle. Had the neat little title run with Hulk Hogan. Sorry, but I really enjoyed that Edge and Hogan run. Especially when you just think about Edge being a wrestling fan. Now here he is, 20 odd years later, teaming with his childhood hero Hulk Hogan. And he was a tag team champions with him. I mean, who can't be inspired by that story, you know? But this is a good match, not great. What else? Booker T and Goldust versus the Un-Americans for the WWE Tag Team titles. This is a good match. Booker T and Goldust, I just love that Booker T Goldust team. I mean, holy fucking shit. Probably one of the best thrown together teams ever. Because you think about it, Booker T and Goldust are going to be a tag team? What? That just sounds so weird, doesn't it? But they made it work. To the ultimate credit, they made it motherfucking work. It was fucking great. Obviously, some of the comedy skits it did were just brilliant. I mean, this was back when WWE knew how to do good comedy and not pancake jokes and the shite comedy we get nowadays with the New Day and crap like that. This was comedy that was actually funny, but I'm not going to go on a tangent there. Obviously, Un-Americans, Lance Storm, Test and Christian was a big... Obviously, they did the anti-American angle, which has been done to death over the years. But it did get good heat, I must admit. Didn't last very long though, but it was pretty good while it lasted. And in all fairness, was probably the biggest thing Lance Storm's ever done in the WWE, to be honest. Don't think Lance Storm ever had a high profile spot after this. Then one of the most underrated SummerSlam matches of all time for the Intercontinental title, Chris Benoit versus Rob Van Dam. This was just a good, aggressive match. And a totally different match for RVD as well, which I loved. Because most of RVD's matches were high spots and stuff like that. But Chris Benoit made him fucking wrestle. I mean, Rob Van Dam was going to have a Chris Benoit match on this night, not a Rob Van Dam match. So, obviously, just horrible what happened in 2007. But just watching Chris Benoit work back then, he was magic in the ring, he really was. I mean, personal feelings aside, Chris Benoit in the ring, one of the absolute greats. I mean, there's no doubt about that. I mean, I don't think anyone could reasonably doubt how good Chris Benoit was in the ring. And I just loved him in this match. He really just wore out RVD. RVD had to fight for this victory. He really did. But yeah, this is definitely one of the most underrated SummerSlam matches of all time. There we go. Undertaker Test was decent. That was pretty good. I don't think it was great, but it was a solid match. Obviously, at the time, WWE obviously had high hopes of Test, but various reasons, Test never worked out as a top guy, which is a shame because on the surface, he seemed to have it all. Youth, size, athletic ability, he looked like a Vince McMahon wrestler, you know. But it just never really happened, unfortunately. I mean, just a shame. Obviously, this was right at the Undertaker's American Badass phase. And this was right before he went to SmackDown and had that big feud with Brock Lesnar. Then Triple H with Shawn Michaels, which I won't talk about in great detail because that last week was on the Fear Fight last week, but I'll just reiterate. Amazing match, classic 5-star match. One of the best SummerSlam matches of all time, one of the most emotional SummerSlam matches of all time. And one of the best stories told in the ring you'll ever see. I mean, and that led to a huge main event. Brock Lesnar versus The Rock for the undisputed WWE Championship. I mean, it's amazing looking back now, thinking about it. Brock Lesnar debuted in the WWE the night after WrestleMania 18. And here he is, 5 months later, SummerSlam 2002, in the main event, versus The Rock. And he's winning the undisputed title. I mean, the rise of Lesnar was unbelievable at the time. And it was even more amazing looking back that the fans didn't even complain about it, because I could just see now, right, just use an example, say next year, night after WrestleMania next year, Lars Sullivan comes out and debuts on the Raw after WrestleMania 35, and then SummerSlam 2019, it's Lars Sullivan in the main event versus, I don't know, let's say Roman Reigns, or maybe even John Cena, and then we've got Lars Sullivan beating John Cena to become the, or Brock Lesnar to become the world champion, or Roman Reigns, or whoever it is. I get the feeling the fans were just online, would just bitch so much about that. But I think Brock Lesnar was so good, and WWE did such a phenomenal job of hiding his weaknesses and building on his strength. I think people wanted Lesnar to win the title. I mean, Brock Lesnar's push from in 02, probably one of the best heel pushes ever. I mean, Brock Lesnar steamrolled everybody, won the King of the Ring, destroyed Hulk Hogan, and then he is now in the ring with a megastar like The Rock. And did I mention that Brock Lesnar was only 25 years old when this match happened as well? They'd only been a pro wrestler for about 2 years, because obviously signed a developmental deal in 2002. Just an epic rise, really, of Brock Lesnar. Apparently, The Rock was the one who was all about putting him over. Rock really wanted to put Brock Lesnar over because The Rock recognised how good Lesnar was going to be. Now, of course, long term it didn't really work out because Lesnar quit in 04, but just imagine how long Lesnar's run could have been had he not quit. And this match was great as well. I don't think it was a classic or anything, but it was excellent match nonetheless. A really fantastic match here. The Rock did everything he could to really make Brock Lesnar a star that night. And of course Lesnar played his part. And Lesnar beats The Rock clean in the middle of the ring to become the new undisputed champion. And that's how you make stars. And that's how WWE made a star. And this, obviously, I don't think the SummerSlam will ever be topped. I really don't. Certainly not going to be topped this year. I'll tell you that for now. And I don't think I've seen a WWE pay-per-view as good as this since then. And that was 16 years ago. I mean, you've had some come close. I mean, if you include takeovers, NXT TakeOver New Orleans was on par. Maybe a couple of the Wrestle Kings were better. I'll say maybe Wrestle Kingdom 10 and Wrestle Kingdom 12 are probably a bit better than this, but as far as WWE pay-per-views, not a chance. I mean, if you've not seen SummerSlam 2013, you get your ass on the network and watch it right now. You won't regret it. So, and that's a wrap, guys, from this one. I think I'm going to take a week off next week and come back the week after SummerSlam with a Fave 5. Because obviously this weekend, this big weekend, we've got the G1 Climax is finally ending this week. We've got Block A final on Friday, Block B final on Saturday, and the Ultimate final on Sunday. Then obviously after that, next weekend, you've got NXT TakeOver Brooklyn 4 and SummerSlam 2017. And then so I'm going to take a break from the Fave 5 for at least a week. Come back after SummerSlam, and I'm not sure what it's going to be yet. I haven't decided. But like I say, guys, I'm still taking suggestions. So if you've got any suggestions, pop them in the comment section below. And until next time, peace.